that is part of my work. And then I'll tell you about my ideas and the inspirations. And first of all, I want to start by saying, maybe so you guys already know I am from Chihuahua, Mexico. And I did my MFA in ceramics in Nacogdoches. So I finished like 3 years ago. And right now I am working on a museum studies certificate. And I've learned the other side of the making and the idea of promoting, or just like sort of what Robbie does, gallery and making art.
I'll give a crash course.
Yeah, crash course. So that's been interesting. But I come from a big family in Mexico. Usually, not so much now, but usually the families were used to be big. So I'm the number 6 of some sisters and brothers, and that is very important for me. A big family, that connection and communication and interaction with a big group, plus my cousins, my aunts, so you can imagine. So that's something that is important in my life, and in some ways it reflects on my work. Two main big influences that I have is family and the human body, but it's into a more abstract way, not representational. And the other big group for me is nature and emotions. And some pieces have a mixture of a little bit of all those groups, like family, nature, what did I say? Let's see if you're paying attention. Emotions, take it. See? You have an A for today. So some of them, you will find a little bit of everything, and some of them will be more specific one idea. And for instance, this piece right here is called Desierto. I come from Chihuahua. This is a really dry area. And I was just thinking on the sand and the way it moves. And sort of the color is a reference to that. So this would be an example of nature in all the aspects. This is another piece. This is one of my some of the most recent work. This is called Amanecer. So if you really like being in nature, watching it, and the way, just like the human body, the procreation of life and how it transforms during the year. So this piece reminds me a lot of a sunset. It's really nice, quiet, and peaceful. Even though it's a very bright color, it's still, for me, it still gives me peace because of the curves are really smooth. And it's not like, for instance, this piece where many things are happening. So that's some samples of the nature. For the human, well, maybe the blue one in the back, that would be another nature idea with nautilus, water, shell-like idea. In the ideas of, or inspirations of feelings, for instance, this is called frustration. So, but that's my idea, or what I was feeling at that time. Maybe a painter or a sculptor or someone else would represent frustration in a very different way. But that's the beauty of all of our minds, that we can choose how to represent what it means for us. So it's kind of more universal. But this piece was developed in a kind of a frustration of communication with somebody. You know, that is important for me, how to express my feelings and how to communicate with others. And when that is not working, so that's why you see more angles, more drastic movements, and sort of the color is more that moment of struggle with myself for not being able to express or get the other person's idea. And on the other side, this piece is kind of the opposite when it's really quiet. The color is also more subtle. And this is it has more of a harmony. And this communication is more, it's not frustration, so you could say more peaceful. So that would be some examples of feelings, like for instance this yellow piece right here with confusion. It's more of a different paths, different ways that you can take, or different ideas that evolve, but they don't have an organized system. It's more flowing, more chaotic in a way. So that would be a different approach. Do you guys have some questions so far? We're doing good? I usually start working on the wheel, and the main aspect is, or the main element for me when I work is the bowl. And you can see it pretty much everywhere. So then I take these pieces, I deconstruct them, and turn them into the shapes that I'm trying to express, like feelings, or nature, or this idea of procreation. But these pieces, I made molds of the bottom of some curved forms and bowls. These ideas come from the Paquime. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, or Mata Ortiz. It's a civilization that existed like 700 years ago in the north of Chihuahua. And these people have these beautiful round vessels with the bottoms are not flat, are just round. But the forms are really beautiful, and they, for me, express a lot of that fertility, the roundness, the creation of life. That's what I feel from them. And the decoration of the pieces are really complicated. So it's a very simple shape, sort of like a canvas, very simple. And they approach the surface with a lot of intricate decorations, a lot of lines, which is the opposite that I do. For me, the forms are more important, and then I just want a more solid color to sort of act as an accent to the shape. But going back to my idea, that inspiration from the Paquime, they start their work from a base, from a mold, sort of like a bowl-shaped mold. And then from there, they start hand building their base. So I was thinking, how can I, because the bowl is an inspiration for me, how can I take their, kind of going back to the beginning, how can I connect with them? Because I feel connected not only because they developed in the same area where I'm from, and they were thinking on these ideas 700 years ago. But then I started making these molds of the impression of a bowl, which allowed me to make these other shapes that are more flat. And for me, that is kind of the beginning, and that's why I called this piece Genesis, which is like the beginning of something. And that's where these ideas come from. And a lot of times when I work, I try not to control the final shape that is going to come out. I try more to focus on the ideas that I want to express, the feelings, or if it's just peaceful, for me, what kind of shape would be peaceful? What kind of shape would be frustration or chaotic. So I try to focus on that and not control the final result, but then I can control the material. If I know what clay can do, then I control that, but let go on so much on the shape. And many times when I work, I focus a lot on, I don't like this piece and I cut it 10 times and try to find where it fits. And that to me is sometimes very tiring because I want the piece to speak and be more fluid. So with that idea, trying to let go more of my thinking, I started doing these pieces right here, which are called bosquejos. And bosquejos in English means sketches. So for me, these are sort of like line drawings in a three-dimensional way. That's also why I chose the color. When you play with line, whether it is a brush or a pencil, you play with the thickness, the quality of line, the thicker thing, and the values. So I was trying to do that with these pieces, but also kind of approach the clay with a more fast way of working instead of thinking too hard. So all these pieces, my goal was to make one piece every 30 minutes. So I was just taking some clay and making the shape, and whatever shape it came out, that was it. And then I would clean it. It would take me a little longer than 30, but the basic shape, that was my goal. To approach it like a sketch, like a warm-up with my hands. So they were more like, whatever comes out, it's it. And some other influences, like these three other pieces in the bottom, I call them Las Tres Gracias, or the Three Graces, from a painting from Rubens. And it's, you see everything here is very abstract, very loose, but the way they interact is sort of like, for me, it's sort of like a dance. They all have some sort of connection. The way some of the parts stick together is what, for me, is beautiful, and how this connection happens. Sort of like when you speak with your relative, there is a connection. So that would be sort of like the influence of family and relationships. And I think that would be the main essence of this body of work. But if you guys have any questions, I would be really happy to answer.
I was wondering if you could speak on this piece. It seems a little bit more defined of a shape as opposed to your others. And I was just wondering why the change of the rest of the work.
One of the influences is the human body. For me, the ball represents more like a female, the womb of the woman that protects. And also in these pieces, for instance, I like to think that the more shape angles are representation of the male figure. And I was doing another piece that I didn't bring that for me was the female representation, and that was the male representation. So it's still, not all the round pieces for me represent female, and not all the angular pieces represent male. Because I think that in a woman there is some male attributes in a man, there is some feminine attributes as well. But that piece was more of a, how can I represent the masculine aspects?
Excuse me. I was trying to count the number of balls in some of your pieces.
I'm sorry?
I was trying to count how many balls would have been. Is that to represent your appreciation of your large family? You know, you have, I don't know, a lost count. Is that really intriguing as you go around and then when you get back to Spain, so I'm trying to find out the number.
Well, you're asking me if I count or if
Well, not so much count, but because all of them have more than 3 or 4 balls, is that
That would
representing
be,
your love for your family, because
Yeah.
you mentioned at the beginning of the
yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that would be the way I approach that, the relationships
Yes.
mainly. How it can be a friendship, it can be mother, daughter, it can be any kind of relationship, and that would be one way of approaching it. I have other pieces that I didn't bring. It was more of an installation on the wall, and they were individual pieces that formed a whole piece.
Like a
And
family tree.
that's like everybody has a specific role in society, but we all also work as a team. So we're similar, but we are all very different. Mhm.
Are any of your works for sale?
Yeah, just let me know. Yeah.
And will you speak on your, how do you get your colors, or are you glazing, or is it the clay body that you color, or how do you get the finished look?
I do mostly work with slips and ingots, which they are basically stains added to clay, if you want to summarize it that way. And I like this kind of matte finish because, as I mentioned before, it's more about the form, but also the color helps the idea behind it, like frustration or the stitches. In the finish, I do it with a spray gun. So it's a very liquidy consistency of the slip. And then I spray it and it stays like that because it's not a glaze, it doesn't melt. It's slip is pretty much mostly clay. So it stays with that, keeps the texture with the spray. And I really like that aspect because they're more kind of inviting to touch. They're approachable.
I have a question. What made you decide to do these arts? Some tiny colors.
I think it was more to create like an accent. And I'm creating the different levels and different connections with the clay itself, but that was more how can I create a different, how can I say it, a different connection without having two parts connected. It was more of breaking the surface with a different finish.
How large is your kiln? Do you have some very big pieces?
These I usually fire them in an electric kiln, like those octagonal,
Yes.
kind of this size.
Are you fearful of breaking it? Or is
Yeah. Well, when I work on shelves. If you guys, if some of you are familiar with drawings, the shelf is the slab that holds the clay that goes into the kiln, and then you can create different levels. So you build sort of like a construction, like a building. You put one floor and then the other floor. So those are the slabs, the shelves. So I make these pieces on a shelf. So I don't have to carry them when they're dry, because that's when the clay is more fragile. And then I just carry the shelf and put it in the kiln. When it's bisque, then I can touch. Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you talk more about that.
I really like that. And that's a little forgotten already. This piece is called Dog. And it's, again, part of the feelings and emotions. And for me, this represented a really quiet and soft thing. It's not, love could be really passionate and a lot of emotions, also be really quiet and mature. So for me, that represents more of a mature, relaxed. There's still a connection, but there's independence in the two. work with that. But then when I found out, I always wanted to work in ceramics because I liked manipulating the clay, the attribute that is that something that you can dig out of the clay, the earth, clean it, and then turn it into something, that can speak to other people. So that's why I choose the clay. Before it was more of a sculptural approach because I didn't have the knowledge of how to work with the kiln. Then when I had the opportunity, I just focused on that area since it was one of my interests, but I couldn't do it before.
There are more questions?
No more questions? But you'll be here for a little while. We can ask
Yeah,
questions
yeah, I'll be around.
or meet you. But please feel free to do that. Don't forget to eat the food that we have. Stay as long as you want. But thanks, Kira. That was really good.
Thank you.